Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. We have 4 unexplained stories about a haunted campsite, a possible Wendigo sighting, the mist from the forest, and the guardian of the woods. That will make you think twice about watching this in the dark. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Let's start. I was recently discussing ghosts and sharing ghost stories with my best friend. When I remembered this strange experience I had during outdoor education camp in 6th grade, I realized I hadn't thought about it for many years, because to this day I have no idea what I actually saw. It still gives me the creeps. My best friend had also been there at the time, but I've been too afraid to tell her about what I saw, in case it sounded too crazy. We are now both in our early 30s. It was in 2001, the whole 6th grade class, about 60 kids at my school, had a week-long camping field trip in some redwoods a couple hours from our school. It was supposed to be a celebration for finishing elementary school. Basically, it was a week of swimming, hiking, crafts, and adventure. It was so much fun. On one of the last nights we were there, the camp aides took us on a night hike into the forest. There were about 5-10 camp counselors, teachers with flashlights, and the students got little glow sticks to hold. We first gathered in a large soccer field to get directions and organize our group. It was very dark. We could see all the stars in the sky. We were also surrounded by thick, dark forest. As I marveled at the nature around me, I saw something white flitting about my peripheral vision. I turned to see a strange, rapidly shifting white entity. It seemed like it was glitching, the way it was sort of blinking in and out of existence. It was almost pitch black outside, yet this figure seemed to be internally lit with sparks of energy. Thinking it was my eyes adjusting to the dark, seeing floaters or ocular debris, I rubbed my eyes and blinked. I looked straight at it, expecting it to disappear, but it didn't. It actually seemed to become aware of me looking at it. As it moved back into the trees a little further, I continued to watch it move about. When I looked away, I could still see it in the corner of my eye start to come closer. It emerged from the perimeter of the forest. At first it looked like a humanoid diaphanous figure. Then it morphed into a wolf-like figure, running on all fours quickly. There was a good distance between me and this spirit, but I still was scared and felt sick to my stomach. I thought I was going crazy, or something was wrong with my eyes. At the time, I didn't believe in ghosts and had only a couple spooky encounters, like cabinets slamming shut randomly. Up until then, I always felt there was a logical explanation to everything. Anyway, we finally began our hike. My best friend was right next to me, but I didn't tell her anything about this creepy, shifting, transparent creature thing in the forest. The thought of her not being able to see it, or thinking I was crazy, was too much of a risk. To my relief, we turned away from the side of the forest where the thing was and start to enter the forest on the opposite side. The trail was very steep. We hiked in a long line, with camp aides at the front, middle, and back of our group. I was somewhere in the middle. After 15 minutes or so of hiking, I remember feeling a prickling sensation down my spine and my stomach churned. I glanced behind me, and that's when I saw the forest thing, at the very back of the line, following us or me. Although there were still a lot of kids in line separating me and the ghost, it was much closer than before, when I saw it in the woods by the field. It now had a distinctly humanoid form, although its edges seemed blurry. It had no face, and if I stared at it directly it would fade somewhat, but not disappear. Like before, when looking at it peripherally, it became much more solid in form. I was scared, but still didn't say anything to anyone. I decided my eyes were still tricking me. Once we got to the top of our destination, it was time to turn around. I saw the figure still hanging around the end of the line. The front of the line doubled back, and, to my horror, I realized I would be forced to pass by the white figure. As soon as I got within 15-20 feet of the figure, it dissipated like steam or smoke right in front of me. I never saw it again. I didn't sleep that night in the open-air cabin. I was very relieved that we were going home the next day. My mother and I currently reside in Western Oregon. She is very outdoorsy, so when I went to see her over the summer, we decided to drive the hour to the coast from her city. We were the only campers at this free campsite at the Forest Hill, which is a sizable foothill of the coastal mountains and can be reached by car in about 25 minutes. We decided to unwind for the rest of the day as soon as we arrived at our destination. In the middle of the night, I heard my mother gasp. I was startled to see her sitting up straight in the tent. She put her hand over my mouth as soon as she realized I was awake, because I was beginning to ask her what was wrong. We suddenly heard footsteps right next to our tent while it was completely silent. The small flap over the zipper was also moving. Then, we saw a silhouette, a few of them. We knew they were not humans because they started making growling noises like animals. I heard the leaves rustling, branches twitch and break as they crawled around our camp. What are they? I thought to myself, these silhouettes look like humans, but they growl like animals. My mom told me to keep my voice down as I panicked. Finally, the footsteps stopped after a couple minutes. We had a hard time sleeping back in our tent but managed to. Then, suddenly I woke up to someone humming. I looked at my mom. She was sleeping peacefully beside me. Humming in the woods? That's weird, I thought. To my horror, against the fireplace, I could see a female figure standing facing our tent. She stood there for a solid 5 to 10 minutes just looking at our tent. Then, I heard her softly laughing in her deep, creepy voice. My goosebumps raised. I shook my mom to wake up. I told her what I saw outside the tent, and my mom opened the tent to check. Nothing was harmed or lost. The woman disappeared in thin air without making any noise. How is that even possible? Then the next day, without any hesitation, we packed our bags and left the forest. One of the forest rangers told us that this forest had someone called the Guardian, and many have experienced her presence there. The whole humming part of the experience was so scary, but her laugh in the middle of the night was beyond fear in my opinion. This incident happened in 2019, and to this day I still can't find an answer. There is a short 20-minute trail in Napalming called Walking on Ancient Mountains. It's basically hiking up a huge rock that brings you above the tree line. You get 360 views of the lakes, forest around you, and there's a few picnic tables up there to eat breakfast as it's a great place to watch the sunrise. So my boyfriend and I drove out there, but we lose signal as we get closer to the top. The last thing we had passed was a campsite about 10 miles down the gravel road before our stop. So we were pretty isolated. Once we arrived, it was 1 a.m. My boyfriend had made a bed in the backseat of our SUV, so we can snooze for a while before hiking up. We pull up to the base of the trail. I wanted to use the outhouse and get ready to sleep. We honk the horn, slam the doors, and yell to scare away any animals nearby like bears or mountain lions before we walk 40F to the bathroom. After all that, we hop into bed, lock the doors, and within that same minute we hear heavy footsteps in the gravel outside the car. It sounded like something was walking around, but also dragging some type of large branch behind them. After being frozen in fear for a moment, and hearing these footsteps approach the car, I quickly scramble to the front seat to start the car and shine my lights around to see what's out there. But there was nothing. No tracks in the gravel, no signs left behind that anything was out there. I do a quick circle shining my lights bright in the bush that's surrounding us. We don't see anything. I was so scared I stayed up for nearly an hour shining my lights, waiting for something to come back out. After not seeing anything, I figured whatever it was had passed through and isn't coming back. So I turned the light off and crawled to the bed in the back where my boyfriend was sleepy. With no exaggeration, the moment I lay my head back down, we hear the footsteps again. This time, it's walking from the rear driver's side, where my head was laying, around the trunk, and to the wheel well next to my boyfriend's head. We look up through the windows, too scared to move, but didn't see anything. Then suddenly, there's loud, slow scratches in the wheel well next to my boyfriend's head. It sounded like fingernails on a chalkboard. My boyfriend hits the wall of the car to scare it away, but we still hear it walking around. After all of this, I don't remember why we had stayed and not gotten the hell out of there. Maybe at the time we figured it was over a 3-hour drive from Winnipeg to get there, and we would have wasted all that time. Either way, we stuck it out. The footsteps and scratching went on for most of the night, and once it was the tiniest bit of light out, where we could see our surroundings better. The sound stopped. We slapped on some headlamps and started our hike. At the time, it was too dark to see. But once we got back from our sunrise breakfast on top of the rock, we saw that the rear tire was flat. No explanation as to why. We got it changed out and headed home. But to this day, when we think about it, there's no animal that I know that would behave like that. Have those heavy, specific footsteps, which in my mind at that moment seemed like a person dragging something. I'm not a huge ghost believer, but I've considered it an option, as perhaps the big rock that sticks out above the tree line could have been a significant spot for indigenous people at one point. I considered a Wendigo, or even a real human, but I can be certain it wasn't an animal. That was my experience in the Manitoba wilderness. So this happened 4 years ago when I was 15. I was a sophomore in high school when my friend Sam invited me to go camping over spring break with her family. Mom, dad, baby brother, and sister, as well as another friend named Nancy in Anza Borrego. Important note, my entire life I've always had paranormal experiences. So did Sam. We bonded over this. Nancy didn't believe in ghosts. We're at this campsite, and it's time for bed. Nancy, Sam, and I shared a tent, while Sam's parents shared a tent with the little siblings who were both under 5. Nancy fell asleep quickly, but Sam and I were having a bit more trouble since our tent was very close to the campsite's graveyard. At one point, it felt as though someone came over and was shaking our tent really hard. I know it wasn't the wind or her parents. The rest of the camping trip goes by and nothing too creepy happens, except swings that would swing by themselves, until the morning we left. Nancy and I were getting ready together in the campsite bathroom, which was up the dirt path from our tents. Then it sounded like someone was walking up the dirt path and stopped right in front of the door. Whoever walked up then let out a very shallow, ragged breath. Then a voice that honestly didn't even sound human said, "I see you." Both the breath and what this thing said echoed throughout the bathroom. Nancy and I looked at each other, obviously scared as hell, grabbed our stuff, and decided to make a break for it. When we opened the door, nobody was there. In the dirt path, you could only see 2 pairs of footprints, Sam and mine. We still ran back to where Sam and her family were at. They were finishing packing up the supplies. We asked all of them if they played a prank on us. They all said no. Sam's dad then told us, on the last day of the trip, literally as we were leaving, "Oh yeah, apparently this campsite is haunted. I saw it online." That was the last time I went camping with Sam. After this experience, Nancy was now a believer in ghosts. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.